I will try and cover all of the topics suggested by my original title. I felt as if we needed a little bit on the benefits and risks of nanoparticles used in cosmetics before we talked about consumer awareness and labeling. It was not until 1938 that we had the Food, Drug, and Cosmetic Act. The impetus for that was that, of course, there were cosmetics already on the market, but the ingredients were not monitored at all, and lye, if you can believe it, lye was used in face creams, and horrendous chemicals were used for mascara, and several women, including very wealthy women, became blind. The government decided that, unlike for drugs, no pre-market approval would be required for cosmetics. Why? Because it did not make, quote-unquote, therapeutic claims. So, as you will see later, the definition for cosmetic is for beauty, for appearance, to stay on the surface only. And then the question is raised, well, what happens when it goes beneath the surface? And how far beneath the surface does it have to go? The ingredients do need to be listed on a cosmetic. Usually it's on the back of a container. It's simply a list of ingredients in descending order by weight without the amount required to be specified. So forget particle size. The cosmetic label doesn't even have to declare the amount. Possible risks of nanocosmetics are going to be similar to the possible risks of sunscreen. There's some evidence that nanotech topical products do penetrate the skin. Do they get to the bloodstream? If so, do the particles migrate to the brain? Most scientists agree that nanotech topical products should not be used on damaged skin or on wounds. There is some evidence that nanoparticles may damage bacterial cell walls. And we have the problem that there are bacterial soaps, or both bacterial soaps and other nanotech products containing nanosilver creams can be washed down the drain into our waterways, and then what happens to the clams and the sea anemones and the other aquatic life? It's another possible issue. It would be very helpful for both dietary supplements and for cosmetics to issue a guidance document, which can be done more quickly with input from stakeholders. And what the FDA did suggest and could make a very strong recommendation within this future guidance document is that if you have a new nanotech cosmetic, your first step would be a transparent meeting with the FDA. Show us your safety data, and we'll give you our very best advice. Another possibility, if the FDA wanted to, they could, via regulation, the rulemaking process of notice in the Federal Register, notice and comment period, they could strengthen the cosmetic labeling regulations to require that the amounts of each of the ingredients be listed, and they could, if they wanted to, amend the labeling regulations for cosmetics to require that the size of particle be listed if it were a nanotech product. And that could be done without pre-market review, so at least you'd have some data to look back on. Final thought, the FDA could require what is called pre-market notice, not quite the level of pre-market approval or review, which would be analogous to what is required for dietary supplements. You submit your safety evidence to the FDA 75 days pre-market, and then get a green light from the agency. So that's another possible solution if the FDA wanted to enact some sort of mid-level oversight, additional oversight over nanotech cosmetics.
Okay, I'd like to give you guys a talk on nanoparticles and sunscreen applications. It's an area that I've been engaged in for a long time, for many years. But I sort of took this approach from not using the sunscreen application as a platform for the technology. It's an interesting technology. But also, I wanted to take this as a way in which, when you do nanoscience, it's actually a different model in the way we're doing research and how scholarly research is defined. And so I want to say a few things at the beginning and the end here about the way you approach research that has a lot of translational value in it, and a lot of things such as ethics and other aspects of human health and safety and environmental issues in it, all together packaged in one big, giant research project. And they look like that. And so these things, you can't see it because this is a pretty big image, but down this axis here, on the molecular scale, the molecules are twisting up like this. They're tuned such that they reflect light in the visible, and then there's dyes in there. You can't also see in that picture. It's too big of a resolution. Those are the things we're going to call chiropost, or whatever we want to call them, but they're nanoparticles that you shine one light in, and another light comes out. So this particular one that I'm going to tell you about, you shine UV light on it, and then we're going to get blue light coming out. Okay? And I'll show you the motivation here. How do sunscreens work? Well, it's a combination of both inorganic and organic materials in a cream. Okay? There's usually zinc oxide or titanium oxide, stuff that we're very familiar with. It's in all kinds of products already. And they scatter light and they absorb UV light. So there's two mechanisms there, scattering and absorption. The organic ingredients are the ones that really are the ones that are absorbing the UV light, and it also can dissipate it as heat on that. And the SPF, or the sun protection factor, usually is a number, and it's hard, there's some interesting definitions of this and how people interpret it, not the definition, but it's efficacy of the UVB protection, okay, not the UVA. I'll show you that in a second. The problems with sunscreen, it's difficult to produce a complete coat all over your skin, okay. Second, even with perfect application, swimming, sweating, whatever you do, that rolls off. The sunscreens need regular application, and when they break down, the organic dyes do break down in the sun. They don't last forever. And for cosmetic reasons, particles in sunscreens are sort of grounded in superfine particles. They're already nano from that perspective. The concept here was, I got really motivated by a paper in 2002 by Sutherland et al. And what they did was very interesting. They took, it was human studies actually, so it's kind of neat. And they irradiated the skin, a little 1 centimeter piece of your skin with UV light, and they excised the skin, they looked at it, and they could see the DNA damage from these thymine dimers splitting apart, okay? And then they went back and they actually put a certain wavelength of blue light back on it, and actually could repair it, okay? So that was sort of the seminal study here. And what's interesting then, if you think about this sort of repair mechanism, is that in UV, in the sunscreen, it's absorption versus wavelength, and sunscreen's full of all this titanium and organic absorbing dyes, etc. And it actually sucks out all the blue light, okay? And so this is actually, if you can do it in time, blue light's a good thing because it can repair UV damaged skin, okay? And so the different ways in which you can approach this are use nanoparticles to try to come in and just get the absorption here, and then cut this off and have a very abrupt filter, so to speak, okay, a band gap or an edge gap. Or you can try to figure out how to use the blue light that you need to repair. What we did is we took our nanoparticles, we tuned them in such a way that would absorb UV light, and it re-emitted in 435 wavelength range, which is where the photochemistry is to repair that damage of those, to get those molecules stuck back together. And so light comes in, it's visible. The UV light gets absorbed, comes in, it's blue. You put that back into the sunscreen. It hits your skin, and we call them nano lasers. They're not really lasers, but it's a narrowing of the line width. And there you go. I think in the future, especially in nano here, we should have been, I mean, you start off things with basic discoveries in science, but you should be asking those questions about ethics and impact on human health very early on. I really must say I wish I would have done it earlier, because I think I would have been much, much further along than I was today. And then start the value creation and the impact. Think about the ethical nature of this, how it may impact people or the environment, etc., how it may impact health of people, and start doing this much earlier than you otherwise do. If the science doesn't turn out, it's not interesting, and everyone learns something, so what? You move on and do something else. But I can tell you, I really think I would be, where we're at today with this and what we learned from the business and also some of the ethics, I think we've been much further ahead of time. So what's next is We have toxicity we're dealing with. We have a group now that's funded at Notre Dame that they do the frog's egg stuff and looking at cells and things like that. I suspect I'm going to have a problem with some irritation stuff on the skin. Some of these materials are known irritants. They, in liquid crystal displays, if it gets on your skin or on a rabbit, they itch a little bit. And so that's been remedied. So we know the chemistry to get rid of that and still have a liquid crystal phase. But nevertheless, I do have elements of that in my current material set. We're going to go then, we're going to get this situated. We're going to go to animal studies here. And there's a hairless mouse model. No jokes on the hairless piece, but there's a hairless mouse model that actually comes down with melanoma very quickly when you hit it with UV light. So there's a great mouse model out there to look at. And then we'll go to the human studies.